The present times are uncertain and constantly changing. We asked artists to give us their perspective on their personal experience. It could be anything from a view from their window to an expression of their inner world. They all agreed to work in the same format: 10 by 10 inch professional birchwood panels, and later on 12 by 12 inch birchwood panels in order to create coherent murals. Over 400 panels were given to over 100 artists. The mural expanded and evolved as time went on through the year, recording history visually and with words.
It's been very hard to make much art with a broken heart.
I was paralyzed as an artist. I felt unmotivated, and I couldn't get anything done. I think for about 6 weeks I just couldn't even go in my studio. I was very sad and feeling without direction.
There were all these thoughts and emotions that went through me, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you about it because you had all those thoughts and feelings too. First of all, there was death, and there was sickness, and there was riots and protests and demonstrations and counter-demonstrations. There were hurricanes, there were floods, there were fires. Massive, massive change in our lives this year. This COVID time has been difficult. I had to turn away from the news and find a peaceful, positive place. So I turned to my art. And the positives of the COVID are I had no interruptions, nobody dropping in on me. I was able to do a lot of art, and I have just loved it, and it's going to change the rest of my life.
This year has been an incredible gift of time, like an alternative universe where I don't feel compelled to go anywhere or do anything or achieve anything in particular. It's been wonderfully freeing.
I've been painting on Maui for 47 wonderful years, and I've done many of my paintings out of doors, what we call plein air painting. Often I'm with friends and we find a wonderful scene to paint of which Maui has an overabundance. During this time of the pandemic, we've been able to ease the strain of being cooped up in the studio and be able to paint outdoors in the fresh air and sunshine. And you've never seen as diverse collection of artwork as you see in this gallery right now. It's amazing, really amazing.
This show has been a great opportunity for me to be able to express the myriad emotions that have surfaced for me because of COVID-19. The first piece I did for this show was called Safety Roll, and it was a simple roll of toilet paper. We were at the beginning of the lockdowns, and this image came to me because people were hoarding toilet paper. I myself felt a strong desire to buy toilet paper in mass quantities, even though I knew running out wouldn't be the end of the world. I found it curious, though, that we even hoard to begin with, and especially something like toilet paper. But when I thought about it, I think, with all the uncertainty and fear that was surfacing, having a stock of toilet paper gave me, even if only symbolically, a sense of safety and control. So I did that piece. The pandemic has been a really hard time for so many people with premature death and loss of loved ones. Several of my own family members on the mainland had the virus, and it was really tough. And it's also been a strain on our society, the economy, our political system. But, as with everything, there are two sides to every coin, and I see that there's also been some good things that have come out of the pandemic, big global things like air pollution being at an all-time low. The next piece I did was a diptych titled Cross-Pollination. In this piece, Cross-Pollination, I wanted to speak to the notion of the entire universe being in constant motion in relation to this relative nature of good and bad. In short, everything being in constant motion is both a gift and an affliction. If we look at flowers cross-pollinating, that process relies upon everything being in constant motion. It's both necessary and quite beautiful. But when you're trying to stop a virus, that same universal law of constant motion becomes unrelenting, severe, and vicious. And that's what I was speaking directly to in this piece.
This time I have felt that I have grown as an artist because I wanted to make every pieces that I do count, even though we are in Hawaii and we have it better than any other place, because we are connected with the rest of the world. The emotions, they are still there. And I have family in Europe and friends everywhere. And so I have felt all those emotions. Trying to show that through my art has been a real point of focus.
Participating in the 2020 exhibition provided me with a spark of direction for my artwork. It was kind of like handing me a creative to-do list, and I quickly realized it was a wonderful outlet and a diversion in a time of continual uncertainty and distressing news. I decided to create paintings with a positive outlook and a lighter mood by sharing my deep love and appreciation for Hawaii and island living.
This is Melissa Camara, and I am a Hawaii Island artist living on the Hamakua coast. This year has been hard being isolated from friends and family, and also trying to become elementary school teachers at the same time. But on the other hand, we have so many blessings. My family is healthy, and we have a home, my studio, and employment. My work reflects that duality of life. It always has. There is beauty and tragedy, which exists even in an exoticized and isolated archipelago. We have species extinction, but we also have bounty. We have disease and health, science and magic. The Hawaiian Islands and her people are no strangers to pandemics of the past, but we will get through this together, and that sentiment is expressed in my work.
Like most people, I know this last year feels like the world is turned upside down. Never mind the crazy insanity of our politics. I felt like my head has been full of cotton candy, and so daily I sat and closely watched the skies. And that's what I've been painting. So deeply satisfying because clouds are ephemeral and ever-changing like our minds.
COVID hasn't affected my work significantly because I'm primarily a plein air painter. I've been very fortunate to set up on site as usual. I've noticed how happy I am having so much extra time to paint. Things have slowed down, and personally it's a pleasure.
Aloha, I'm Carmen Gardner. Let's see, 2020. Well, before the pandemic, when I was teaching at Kaunoa Senior Center, I had a student, his name was Hideo. Hideo was a little hard of hearing, and every Monday when he'd come to class, I'd start off by asking, "So Hideo, how are you doing today?" And every Monday he would reply, "Well, I woke up. Can't be that bad." I'd say that pretty much sums up 2020.
Celebrating the creativity of this past year. It's been an amazing period for me, actually. The ideas I just let happen about, I think I've worked with amoeba type images of micro sea life or, macro space fantasy stuff. It could be one or the other or both. and has been a fun evolution of imagery. And every viewer sees different things, and that's been a great joy for me, is to create this vague sense of it being something but you're not quite sure what, and letting the viewer fill in their version of the visual. A big piece of my work is, and my practice, is to go into the studio and ask to be taught, ask to be gifted with new experience, new ideas, new understandings, even of my own urges, and let it teach me what to do. So what started as a jumble, which really was very expressive of what was going on this year, all of a sudden flowered with new growth. So, look, I get verklempt, because it matters. It's powerful to me. So all the fresh leaves is what nature does. Nature heals. It happens automatically. And, you know, we will reach the end of this shutdown period, and new growth will return us to a sense of life and future and renewed community and renewed personal expression.
Aloha, this is Sarah Honeycutt, and at first, even though I was concerned for the COVID pandemic just beginning, I was really ecstatic at seeing the whole world really pull together on the same page for the love of people, for the protection of often not even so much of ourselves as for our parents and our spouses and our families and people that we loved, to close down the entire economic and social world and everyone stay home for this. I thought, wow, people are going to have to deal with themselves and their spouses and their children and have time. But as it stretched out into these many, many months, I discovered the dysfunction in this model and found that I couldn't create. Because of that, now that I'm in motion again, I'm just starting to see the fruit. Color is happening. I've worked in mostly a monochromatic palette for years, and now the figures that I'm making are surrounded by flowers and fruits in abundance and color. Answered promises are growing now from a deeper faith and a freedom that I'd been praying for. It's all unexpected fruit.
I'm Kathleen Castles, and I'm a fiber artist. I paint on fabric, and then I stitch on it, generally with a machine. For an artist, it's really easier to deal with emotions, I think, because all we have to do to let them flow out is to take a brush or a pencil and put it on a surface, and then the emotions flow out. This was a wonderful opportunity for me. There were so many things that were going on in the world. Demonstrations, there were hurricanes, there were floods, there were fires. Massive, massive change in our lives this year. And putting it into, well, something you could visualize that had emotion and thought into it was something that I welcomed.
Hello, my name's Elizabeth Keller. I'm a watercolorist. I struggled, as I think we all did, at the start of COVID. Not that there weren't plenty of struggles before COVID with the current administration and all kinds of troubles, but COVID really, was the cap to it. And I felt sort of paralyzed for the first couple of weeks, as just about everyone else did in one way or another. I wasn't working much. I was a little bit anxious, or very anxious. Was trying to get used to all the new order. I didn't feel guilty about not working or not being inspired. It felt so much a part of the process to need to take stock and try to calm down a little bit. This is another one of mine, painted somewhat recently, the Pu'uneni Post Office. I'm very drawn to the old buildings in Maui, especially the ones that haven't been gentrified too much. As our situation went on and on and on over months, I certainly calmed down and realized that working on pieces was a very good way to sort of center myself, stay focused, and at the end of the day, maybe have some satisfaction.
Well, I think I found a lot of inspiration, actually, just being kind of behind and observing this whole ordeal of everybody's different feeling and different expression. And I think it reflects on all of this. It's just, there's no sadness in a way. It's a lot of happiness, a lot of colors. And I think this kind of event is really showing that we can still, express ourselves and show a lot of beauty and a lot of emotion. And it is important in our time that where we are a little bit more confined and a little bit intimidated to come out and talk about our own feeling. And being an artist, it's a little easier because you have a platform, a community, and the opportunity itself to use a brush or a pencil or anything to express your feeling. And like I said, I think that the whole representation of this whole show is showing a lot of optimism and a lot of happiness. And I think in those days, it's very important.
Throughout the current pandemic, I have sorely missed interacting with other artists face to face and going to the galleries and museums to see the new exhibitions. Fortunately, since I am quite used to working long hours to produce my pieces, I was able to concentrate more on my work with few distractions, which is a silver lining from this unfortunate circumstance. I focused on the positive side of life and tried to explore new and fresh ways. Through the mural project hosted by Viewpoints Gallery, I was able to combine two of my favorite media, drawing and the clay, in one piece. While concentrating this new series of artwork, my spirit was lifted up and I was able to maintain peace and calm. I hope it also has the same effects on the viewers as well.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Lee, and I'm a ceramic artist and have been studying ceramics since we came here in 2002 and have just had a joyous opportunity to create art. And then along came the virus. And we all, I think, stopped in our tracks. And I wasn't sure what to do. I had artwork and galleries were closed and art fairs were closed and everything just ground to a halt. And so I contacted a friend of mine, Don Smith, who had been nipping at my heels to do some artwork in a collaborative way. And we met and came up with a few ideas, this one representing the COVID virus being shoved into a little cage, and this one with people having to be separated that really wanted to be together and wanting to make contact with each other and wanting to make each other feel secure. And that kind of got me over the hump of why bother?
When I look back to the year 2020, it seems like in so many ways it was a disastrous year. But as an artist, it was actually a pretty good year for me. The quarantine gave me an opportunity I'd never had in my life, which was to just stay at home and paint. I started painting and I didn't want to be too glum or too depressed, which was so much like, you know, with COVID and all the political unrest and the protests going on. I didn't want to really focus on those things. I wanted to, you know, be a little more whimsical, a little more upbeat. And so I did things like this with the turtle sleeping on the beach, which we see a lot of on Maui. And but I titled it Wake Me in 2021, because that's the hope, is that things are going to be better next year.
So this project is really, I think, so right up my alley, because I truly believe that art for all artists is a reflection of our culture, our society as a whole. And oftentimes artists love to put the emotion of what we're all feeling together. So if I'm feeling something, generally you're probably feeling it too, and especially the pandemic situation. So I think when this project came along, my first thought was, how do I feel? I really realized, I think I felt really scared, really nervous of the future, because there's a big unknown. We didn't know what was coming down the pike, and our worlds were turning upside down, not working, and so on. The other thought was how sinister it felt, because something we couldn't see, we hadn't really dealt with before. So my early pieces were a reflection on that. So I had done some little etchings of the virus on a scene. The other thing that really struck me was how we couldn't recognize each other. These masks made us all feel foreign. I'd be looking at my friends going, is that so-and-so? I mean, and they felt funny to wear for a while. Now we're used to it. Then the third was, wait a minute, I'm feeling really thankful. And all the beauty around me and how I'm so grateful to live on Maui. And we realized we're in an area where this pandemic isn't quite as bad as it is in the mainland for our friends over there, friends and family. So, and then we started looking around at all the beautiful things around us. And so that was my kind of third and fourth thought kind of combined, being thankful, but also looking at the beauty around us and wanting to reflect on things that I really enjoy.
Aloha, Beth Marcille here. Well, 2020 definitely pushed my reset button. All the activities on my schedule came to a grinding halt, and with that, surprisingly, came a sense of freedom unlike anything I've experienced in quite a while. I noticed that time became fluid. Digging in the dirt, planting seeds, tending new life, and harvesting food from our garden has been a pure joy. In a time of roller coaster emotions that we've collectively experienced around the world, from fear, anxiety, and grief, to the great sigh of relief that came with slowing down and simply having time to smell the roses, something began to shift. New sprouts of awareness arose within me, along with a childlike curiosity and playfulness. Long bike rides, in which my body was engaged but my mind was free to roam, allowed fresh new ideas to bubble to the surface, wanting to be expressed visually. Creative exploration and experimentation took over. Following an artistic impulse took me on long, meandering journeys and opened doors that I didn't know were there. And although we artists have been creating in our solitary bubbles these past months, being a part of this inspiring project at Viewpoints has been the thread that has held us together as a community. This year has been many things to all of us. What a gift it has been to witness it through each other's eyes.
Aloha, this is Sherry Levin McNerthney. This year has been an incredible gift of time, like an alternative universe where I don't feel compelled to go anywhere or do anything or achieve anything in particular. It's been wonderfully freeing for me. I've actually loved it. I love this state of being where I feel free to just sort of explore and experiment and push paint around and make stuff without any compulsion to produce anything in particular or accomplish anything in particular. It's been really great. And I want to hold on to this feeling once life gets back to whatever the new normal is going to be.
Hello, my name is Matt Montaigne, and I am primarily a landscape and wildlife artist, and I like to paint people too and other scenes. And for this show, I was really taken down at Ho'okipa Beach Park by a scene of the lifeguard tower and the rescue. So that's what I've tried to capture here. And the people say, well, why didn't you just put rescue right side up? Because this is the way it is. When the lifeguards come down and they have to make a moment's decision, grab the board and go. And they're always ready. They're always there. And they're on standby, they're trained, and when they're needed, they go. So this is entitled Ready to Go. And that is something that so many of our wonderful first responder people have done. They've given their life to that to maintain a steady course for the rest of us through the last months. And that is something that I was so struck with this scene.
In the early days, I would paint dictation of a kind that would replicate anything that I looked at. Since then, I've come to enjoy pure creativity. The only thing that separates us from the animal is our art. Man is the only animal that creates art. Well, he has survived by means other than art. And through his art, he creates something that no one needs to survive. And unlike an animal that spends his entire life surviving, we paint because we have survived.
My name is Susie Papa-Nicholas, and I mostly do figurative paintings of Polynesians and Hawaiians at events. I like to get them looking really casual or just talking together or being pensive. And I really like being outdoors more. I've spent more time in my garden. I've gotten some really fabulous tools to work in my garden. So thank you very much, Oliver and Joelle, for giving us this opportunity and keeping all of the artists together during this time when we have to be so isolated.
Aloha, I'm Nancy Peckner, and this time of being an artist during COVID has been good and bad. I couldn't get anything done. I think for about 6 weeks I just couldn't even go in my studio. I was very sad and feeling without direction. And then I had this opportunity to paint some 10 by 10s for Viewpoints Gallery, and everything shifted for me because what I realized is that I had a reason to make my art. I guess what I realized out of all this is I don't just make my art for me, I make it for the world and to share. And being a creative person isn't something one wants to do by themselves. And so this has just got me going, and I haven't stopped since. I've actually been incredibly productive. So I went from feeling very unmotivated to realizing I had more time to actually do the thing I love to do, and I've just immersed myself in it ever since.
I was born and raised in Hawaii, 1/8 Hawaiian, which goes deep into my art. This COVID time has been difficult. I had to turn away from the news and find a peaceful, positive place. So I turned to my art, and the positives of the COVID are I had no interruptions, nobody dropping in on me. 2 sources of income stopped, part-time teaching and a jewelry business that I had. But the good news is I was able to do a lot of art, and I have just loved it, and it's going to change the rest of my life.
The pandemic has been a challenge for many artists, but for myself, there was an additional thing that happened in that I lost my dearest friend to an aggressive cancer right after the pandemic started, and watched him decline without health services here on Maui to help him. And I went into kind of a shell because of that. And the show helped me to start working again, because I wasn't And the work I do, I'm fortunate when I wake up in the morning, I look out my window, I see the sun, I see flowers, I see the ocean, I see the mountains. And oftentimes the work reflects those, the beauty that I just see. But I couldn't do that with what was going on. Not with it's just a pandemic and murder in the streets, but my friend dying. And so I tried to create something that would show the beauty of Maui, and my piece is called a Different View, but show what would happen when so many problems arrive, even when you're in a beautiful situation. And that's what the first piece is. I had something I'd never done before, which was, I used to paint in oils. This is acrylic. And I carved and etched aluminum and overlaid it on top of the painting with words that were coming from what I was seeing around me and around the world.
My name is Karuna Santoro. When COVID first came to Maui, I was actually quite fascinated and intrigued by this new virus. It seemed to bring the whole world to a standstill. I thought, no problem, we'd just stay home for 2 months and the whole thing will go away. Time was spent sewing face masks, fostering kittens, baking, and gardening. By mid-year, my emotions had turned to disbelief and anger about how badly managed this crisis had become and how many people believed in conspiracy theories and were politicizing a health crisis. As far as my art goes, it has been challenging to stay motivated and be creative with galleries closed and customers gone. I do miss dinners with friends, hugs and traveling, but feel extremely lucky to live on Maui, where we have beaches, sunshine, and nature.
Aloha, I'm Koana Smith. I took up art at the age of 60, that was 25 years ago, and had a wonderful time with it, painted a great deal, got very involved in plein air painting, watercolor, coordinated the Maui plein air painters for about 5 years. I see that the pandemic and all of the things that have resulted have been restrictive in our lives in many ways. But on the other hand, it's created for me personally a great deal of freedom. I haven't worked since March 15th. And after a time with the sewing machine and making masks, I thought, okay, it's time to paint again. So I started with the National Plein Air Convention online for 4 days, and 6 a.m. we were up and at it. Then I followed that with a John Cosby 5-day plein air workshop, and then a trip to Hana for 5 days of painting with my friends. And then this came along and I thought, why not? So I had a painting in the earlier show, and this is my take on Napili Bay at rest, where I swim most mornings. And up until recently, I was the only one in the water some mornings. 2 or 3 other regulars would show up. The turtles would come. No boats, no airplanes overhead. It was extremely peaceful.
Anyway, I feel like this whole thing and the stimulus of putting things in this show have rekindled my love of art, and I'm very grateful for all of you for that, and thank you.
When the pandemic hit, I was forced to remember very quickly what is actually important in my life. The global and historical perspective helped me to realize that we are all humans on this planet. People struggle, people live, and they die. The nuances of a life truly lived are refined by challenge after challenge. Often we have a choice to face them and become stronger, or let them overwhelm us and leave us broken. A few months into the pandemic, I was invited to paddle with Hawaiian Outrigger Voyaging Canoe Society. The story these people tell are of love, having each other's backs, working together, living sustainably, voyaging to beautiful places from beautiful places, with loving people. They call it the family of the Va'a. So, some love to share with my fellow humans who have been facing down seemingly insurmountable fears. No matter how high or wide or scary the challenges you're facing, stay the course. You are strong enough and you can make it.
Dance with our shadows after the rain. If we just hold the line after the storm, the sun always shines. We've got to hold just hold on. sad